Gaza's truce between Palestinian resistance and Israel enters day 2. Government forces defend Houthi attacks on Marib province. On the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, Yemeni women continue to struggle amid conflict. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today News. I am Abir Ali. A total of 137 trucks carrying food, water, medicine and other essentials have been unloaded in Gaza since the truce began. This was the biggest humanitarian convoy to enter Gaza since the war started on October 7th, as the United Nations Office for Humanitarian Affairs said in a statement. It is said 129,000 liters of fuel also entered the Palestinian territory, and 21 patients in critical conditions were evacuated from the north of Gaza. Palestinian resistance is expected to swap more of its hostages Saturday for those held in Israeli prisons on the second day of a ceasefire that has allowed critical humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip and given civilians their first respite after 7 weeks. On the first day of the 4-day ceasefire, Palestinian resistance released 24 of the about 240 hostages taken during October 7th, and Israel freed 39 Palestinians detained in prison. Those freed from captivity in Gaza were 13 Israelis, 10 Thai nationals, and citizens of the Philippines. This report has more.
The Palestinian resistance was preparing to exchange 14 Israeli hostages for 42 Palestinian prisoners held by Israel in an exchange that comes on the second day of the ceasefire that has allowed critical humanitarian aid into Gaza and given civilians their first respite after 7 weeks of war. On the first day of the 4-day ceasefire, Israel freed 39 Palestinian prisoners, while the Palestinian resistance released 24 Israelis. An anonymous Egyptian official stated that the Palestinian resistance presented Egypt and Qatar with a list of 14 hostages to be released, and the list has been given along to Israel. As per the terms of the truce deal, the Palestinian resistance will free 1 Israeli hostage for every 3 Palestinians released. Additionally, Israel's prison service had already declared that it was getting ready to release 42 prisoners. For the 2.3 million Palestinians who were in shock and desperation due to the Israeli bombardment that had destroyed residential neighborhoods, murdered thousands of people, and forced thousands from their homes, the start of the truce marked the beginning of a glimpse of relief, yet the suffering continues. The United Nations said the pause allowed it to increase the volume of food, water, and medicine delivered to the highest level since humanitarian aid convoys resumed on October 21. Additionally, it delivered cooking gas for the first time since the start of the war, and 129,000 liters of fuel, or slightly more than 10% of the daily pre-war volume. Aid reached northern Gaza, the focus of Israel's ground offensive, for the first time in over a month. According to the United Nations, the organization and the Palestinian Red Crescent Society were also able to transport 40 patients and family members from a hospital in Gaza City, where much of the Israeli attacks has happened, to a hospital in Khan Yunis. 24 Palestinian women and 15 teenage boys were released from Israeli prisons in the occupied West Bank in East Jerusalem. These teenagers had only been jailed for throwing stones. According to Health Ministry in Gaza, more than 13,000 Palestinians have been murdered as a result of Israel's attacks on Gaza. About 2/3 of the dead are women and minors. It is estimated by the ministry that 6,000 people are missing and may be buried beneath the rubble.
هذه هي حارتي يا جماعة الخير. هذا المكان اللي أنا كنت عايش فيه. كل الذكريات، كل الطموحات، كل الأحلام اللي بنيتها في هذه المنطقة زي ما انتم شايفين كلها اختفت. بطل في أثار ملامح للحياة. انتم شايفين فيش ولا حجر واقف على حجر. فيش ولا مكان واقف لسه. لكن مع ذلك لسه الأمل موجود. لسه إن شاء الله حنعمر كل هذه المنطقة بإذن الله. شايفين كل المباني هذه اللي اتدمرت؟ إن شاء الله حنرجع نبنيها من أول وجديد. والاحتلال ما حيقدر يمنعنا وما حيقدر إنه يخلي معنوياتنا تنزل إن شاء الله. صامدين وثابتين وحنعمر.
Four Yemeni students died in a horrific traffic accident in Federal Republic of Russia. Student resources explained that a horrific traffic accident occurred in the past few hours, causing the death of four of their fellow students. The sources stated that the Federal Republic of Russia employs dozens of students studying in a number of universities and schools as part of the Yemeni community present there. A survey conducted by the Central Statistics in Aden and Sana'a revealed shocking numbers about the status of the educational process in Yemen. The results of the survey, which covered 22 governorates, showed that 1 in 4 children is in the basic education stage, and more than half of the children in the secondary stage are out of school. Only half of the children are enrolled in the first grade of primary school, and completion rates are only 53% in basic education and 37% in secondary education. Government forces thwarted the Houthi attacks south of Ma'rib. Military sources said that violent battles took place between the forces of Sabah Axis and the Houthi militia on the fronts of Harib district. The source indicated that the government forces of Shibah Axis managed to confront the Houthi attack on their positions on Harib front. In Taiz, the Women's Alliance of Political Parties organized an awareness seminar entitled Women's Participation in Political Life. This symposium aimed to enhance awareness of the importance of women's empowerment and their active role in all aspects of life. It also reviewed ways to enhance women's representation in decision-making positions and the cultural and institutional challenges that women face in reaching these positions.
We thank the ally of the political parties and the civil society organizations. This symposium entitled The Participation of Women in Political and Economic Life, and it aims to the inclusion of women in decision-making. This symposium came to enhance the role of the woman and her importance in decision-making. As in previous stages, women had roles in development process regarding social and political issues.
Violence against women and girls remained one of the most prevalent and pervasive human rights violations in the world. Globally, an estimated 736 million women have been subjected to physical or sexual violence. In Yemen, women continue to be subjected to human rights violations, especially in the Houthi-controlled areas. This report has more details.
Violence against women and girls is one of the most widespread, persistent, and devastating human rights violations in our world today, and remains largely unreported due to the impunity, silence, stigma, and shame surrounding it. According to the United Nations, Yemen is one of the worst places in the world to be a woman. With the Iranian-backed Houthi terrorist group controlling vast areas of the nation, Yemeni women have lost much of their autonomy and have been stripped of fundamental human rights. The Houthi militia continues to brand Yemeni women as society's axis of evil. The militia also deployed a force of arms to suppress the movement of activists, detaining many of them, disappearing others, and putting pressure on the families of numerous activists and women of civil society to keep them confined to their homes. A report by the panel of experts on Yemen of the Security Council Committee documented a large number of these violations by the Houthi militia against women in Yemen. Among these acts are the kidnapping and disappearing of women activists, rape, fabrication of malicious accusations, and sham trials against professionals in different sectors. The report, issued in February 2021, cited 9 cases in which the Houthi militia kidnapped and detained politically active women due to their opposition to Iran's ideological views or political orientation. According to the report, the Houthi militia used claims of prostitution as a pretext to limit community assistance to ex-convicts, discourage their active involvement in local community, and guarantee that they do not threaten the Houthis' authority. Women in Yemen, especially those who have been detained, continue to suffer greatly, having lost their security, life, social standing, and ability to return to their regular lives even after their release.
A giant commercial cargo ship was attacked by an Iranian drone in the Indian Ocean. A U.S. defense sources said that a suspected Iranian drone targeted a commercial ship belonging to a giant French shipping company dedicated to transporting containers. It was reported that the attack led to fires breaking out on the ship, but no casualties were reported. Government forces defend a Houthi infiltration attempt. The sources said that government forces backed by popular resistance thwarted an infiltration attempt by the Houthi militia on sites on a front in the western countryside. Government forces surrounded a group of Houthi militia members who attempt to infiltrate on the eastern front of Taz. The Houthi militia expelled a senior UN official from Sana'a without giving reasons. Human rights sources said that the Houthi militia expelled the Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights from Sana'a the day before. Houthi targeting of workers in UN and international organizations in Sana'a escalated as the security and safety officials to save the children was killed. Coming up in the news. An artist from Hodeidah uses artworks to express the untold suffering of Yemenis during wartime.
Sea tortoises in Yemen are prone to extinction, with 90% of them are female. The severe gender imbalance will continue until it brings about the complete loss of sea tortoises in Yemen.
لا ضعيف الذكور وخاصة في الفترة الأخيرة هذه يعني قبل هذا شهر يناير هذا تحصل أكثر شيء ميتين الذكور على الشواطئ من الوسط هذا يعني مليان الذكور ميتين يعني كثير يعني باليوم نحصل 10 حبات 15 حبة مليان منهم يعني وخفوا بالكثير ما شيء زي أول لأن أول كان تحصل لهم مخلوطين الذكر والأنثى الآن أكثر شيء الإناث.
هناك دراسات عملت في كثير من المناطق الساحلية في المنطقة الاستوائية وأثبتت ارتفاع نسبة الإناث مقارنة بالذكور لتصل حتى إلى نسبة أكثر من 90% من نسبة الفاقسات، وبالتالي سيعرض نسبة الذكور بشكل عام إلى التناقص وربما خلال أعوام قادمة إلى الانقراض للذكور من السلاحف البحرية.
Welcome back. In a picture is worth 1,000 words than each of the paintings below of Fadl al-Wahidi. An artist from Hodeidah is worth at least 10,000. His works tell the full story of war, survival, struggle, and surprisingly hope. More on this story is within this report.
Hais-based Fadl Ali al-Wahidi is a fine artist who has distinguished himself in local and international exhibitions. An art enthusiast from his early years, he defies all odds by plunging headfirst into the sea of artistic invention.
This hobby took root in my early childhood. I have participated in a number of local and international exhibitions, including Yemen's first art exhibition in the House of Books. One of my paintings, depicting the Sabra and Shatila massacre, won first place and later won fourth place in Moscow's International Art Exhibit.
Fadl al-Wahidi attempts to portray the agony of war, the helplessness of demolition through simple color. Not just a passing artist, al-Wahidi is a universal interpreter, whose lingering brushstrokes resemble the tangible world, the crimson-splattered streets.
I hope the Yemeni government and international community would support the art sector in Yemen to help sustain a new generation intent on creation. They must finance training courses for hobbyists to develop their skills so that people can embody their pains and struggles into tangible imagery. Despite the Houthis' crackdown on all areas of life, Yemen will return to its former glory. These paintings depict the aftermath of landmine explosions and how they don't spare any form of life.
In the midst of warfare, art remains a salve to the Yemeni people's wounds, a silver lining as bleak anguish takes hold. People have resorted to art to unleash their agony, to paint their loftiest hopes.
The official authorities in Al-Mahra Governorate announced the opening of a number of secondary dirt roads affected by Cyclone Taj. The deputy representative for technical affairs in the governorate said that the working teams were able to open the road. The official pointed out that during the past few days, all areas affected by the hurricane were connected to some roads as an initial step to facilitate the movement of citizens. The Ministry of Electricity and Energy signed a first communication of understanding with the Korean company to establish a gas unit in Aden. The document demanded that the Korean company is going to establish a unit for liquid gas to operate gas-fired power plants in Aden. This came with the aim of raising its generating capacity, covering the current deficit, reducing the cost of producing electrical energy, and enhancing its sustainability. In Shabwa Governorate, a youth community initiative established a museum of folklore in Al-Talh district. The initiative aimed to preserve Yemen's rich heritage. This report has more.
A youth and community initiative succeeded in establishing the first folklore museum in Al-Talh district in one of the districts of Shabwa Governorate. With the growing popular awareness in Shabwa, the responsibility of preserving popular heritage as part of components of the third identity and history, a youth and community initiative concluded in the establishment of the first folklore museum in Al-Talh district.
This idea was proposed by a group of youth here with many ancient treasures, and I opposed the idea to them to establish a Talh museum.
The museum consists of several sections and wings containing hundreds of pieces and models of ancient traditional objects and tools used by the people. The People's Initiative comes out of their keenness to preserve and document these historical treasures in a step aimed at protecting them from theft and smuggling, especially after the discovery of operations to smuggle them to some countries and attribute them to their popular heritage.
Each pavilion has different subjects. One is for the customs, the agriculture tools and weapons. We have almost 3 pavilions in the museum.
The Talh Museum is the fourth museum in Shabwa, which was established through community initiatives and efforts in light of what the governorate is witnessing. There is a movement and cultural awakening that has begun to attract attention to the historical heritage in Yemen.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Gaza truce between Palestinian resistance and Israel enters day 2. Government forces defend Houthi attack on Marib province. On the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, Yemeni women continue to struggle amid conflict. This is the end of the news. Thank you for streaming with us. It was Abir Ali.